The Trump administration has imposed sanctions on Venezuela's state-owned oil company. That company goes by an acronym. It's PDVSA. You might also know it as the parent company of the U.S.-based Citgo. And the intent here is, again, to increase economic pressure on Maduro. Money. Why do we care so much about money? I'll explain it quickly. Maduro is in a tough spot, and making sure your top deputies, that little circle right around you, are still with you, especially the military, is how dictators keep power. How do they get their loyalty? Money. So Maduro doesn't appear to be going anywhere at the moment, but he is trying to get money. And he's not going anywhere, at least willingly. But there are growing calls, especially among Republicans, for the Trump administration to do more there, possibly a military intervention. Earlier today, I spoke with Daniel Martino. He fled Venezuela with his family in 2016. I wanted to get his unique perspective. And he says he wants the U.S. to be involved, but not unilaterally.
Daniel, you're 20 years old, living in the U.S., but just a few short years ago, you and your family were living in Venezuela. You ended up having to flee. Could you tell us your story?
Yes. So in 2016, I finished high school, and I was fortunate enough to be able to get a scholarship from my university here in Indianapolis, IUPUI. And I basically just work here and keep up my expenses that way, and that's how I came up to the U.S. My parents had to leave Venezuela a little over a year ago, and now they're in Spain. They could not just bear it staying there. We've been targeted by criminals. We can't find the things that we need, like toilet paper or food that we want. The government rations it. I've had to make lines myself for hours to buy groceries. I have to put my fingerprint, and they would tell me how much I could get of whichever good was available.
When you see someone like Guaido step up and say, I am the interim president, we are going to hold new elections, the last ones were shams, and then after that, many of the nations around the world who are the wealthiest and most powerful getting behind him, what's your thought?
It really gives me a lot of hope. Juan Guaido is a young man who I didn't even know him until later last year, and he now is a star because he's doing exactly what we have been telling for many years that the opposition had to do in Venezuela to get rid of Maduro. And it was that we needed to set up an alternative government supported by our Constitution. All we're doing in Venezuela is within our Constitution. Guaido was proclaimed president within the procedures set in our Constitution, and it is Maduro currently the only occupation force that is actually intervening with Cuba, with Iran, Russia, and China. All of those countries have troops, and they have military members advising the Venezuelan regime to torture us, to oppress us.
What do you think it's going to take for Maduro to finally realize that maybe he doesn't have the full support of most of his people? Is it going to take a stoppage of drugs that then funnel money to people in the military and those at the top? I mean, he seems to be holding on in some way to the support of those right around him, which is what he needs.
Many analysts believe that what's going on is that Maduro does have the support of the military. Otherwise, the military wouldn't continue killing people in the streets, which is what they're doing, and kidnapping them and torturing them. If you Google it, it's pretty easy for all your viewers right now to see what's going on with torture in Venezuela. So what I would say is that Maduro has the support of the military. The only way for him to lose it is for the money flow to stop. And it's going to be basically impossible for any country to stop the drug money flow. We've seen what's happened with the war on drugs. So it would either be defections within the military, which I see unlikely, or Guaido requesting an international intervention.
Meaning by force, not just financial instruments, you think by force?
That's correct. If Brazil and Colombia and the United States and even the United Nations, if they approve of it, which would be unlikely with Russia and China in the Security Council, that would be the only way for Maduro to get out.
A few more top stories we're following tonight. Handguns are becoming more popular with gun owners in the U.S. The amount of people who own guns has actually dropped over the last 40 years. That's the total. But those who do own guns, they're now more likely to own handguns, not rifles or shotguns. It's according to a new study in the journal Pediatrics. It found that as handgun ownership went up, so was the number of children killed by firearms. That's because, they say, handguns are often bought for personal protection. They tend